Welcome to the Uplift, where we are uplifting our lives, uplifting each other, and uplifting our communities together. Thank you for joining myself, Cy Herrera, and Tessa Savala here, two women, two attorneys, doing it our way, and inviting you here each week to share in on the stories, advice, and life lessons we've picked up along our journeys that keep us uplifted, and that will hopefully do the very same thing for you. Now buckle in and let's get ready to be uplifted.
All right. So this week I have been thinking about ABBA reuniting. And I remember as a kid, ABBA had broken up and it was this being Swedish, it was very, on top of everybody's mind. And there was this never saying that they would never, ever, 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 ever work together again. They had, of course, their issues where they had intermarried each other and there were probably a lot of emotions going on and they had toured a lot and they'd been in close proximity and there was this concept that nope, they were not working again. It didn't matter if somebody offered $1 billion, they weren't doing it again. I think they even threw out that number. $1 billion, it wasn't going to bring them together. And now here we are, they're releasing new music. So it made me really think about this idea of when we say never, like never ever will I do X, or never ever will I consider being, friends with this person, or never ever will I take this job or work in this field. And think about how much that limits us, and whether or not it's a benefit or detriment to us. I mean, ABBA got back together because they love music and they love making music together.
Mm-hmm.
Does that apply to us too? And how much are we limiting ourselves by saying, never will I, and then fill in the blank?
Yeah,
Have you found in
absolutely.
your lifetimes where you either said never or you've seen someone say never, and then it just, I don't know whether it's karma that wakes us all up and says, here's an opportunity in that thing that you said never in, and it looks really good.
Yes. Well, I think the interesting thing with ABBA is like it was such a public thing that they felt so confident, so yeah, so absolute about it that they put it out there. And so I find that interesting because I think on a personal level, we don't make such public declarations usually, but how many times do we say never in our head
Yeah.
or to our friend or, just I mean, how many times do we look at something and just rule it out immediately? And
Hmm.
do we really, really sit with that and think through why we are counting ourselves out?
That's an excellent point. Like, why did that thought that we would never do fill in the blank, where did that come from? Was it
Mm-hmm.
culture or our parents or
Mm-hmm.
something we saw or read somewhere or a friend who said, ooh, I don't like that, whatever it is, job, person, career field?
Absolutely. I think that we just have to, with like so many other things, pause and examine like where these thoughts are coming from and whether or not they really represent, what's best for us. And so, to your point, like let's take a moment every time that those thoughts come through and just question them. I think that is an incredible practice because never can come from so many places. I think I so many places, right? And I think for me personally, the first thing that comes to my mind is that never comes from insecurity. I think that you can look at other people doing something, and on the outside, and maybe even in the inside, it looks like they are doing a banged up job. They're doing an amazing job. They're very capable of this thing that maybe you were looking at because you're attracted to it, right? For some
Hmm.
reason, you're paying attention there. It's grabbing your eye, it's grabbing your attention. So, I mean, I always tell people, like, pay attention to what you are being drawn to because there's a reason. Like, I remember, I probably said this before, but I used to be really drawn to the executive directors of the nonprofits that I would intern at, and I didn't really know why. I just felt like this admiration for them. But if I had reflected a little bit, it was, now it's obvious to me, like that's what I wanted to do. I felt like they were doing something really great and I wanted to be a part of it. But why in your mind, maybe when you look at someone and think like I admire them, do you not say I want to be them? Like why do we just count ourselves out? And I think part of it is just, I think it is insecurity. And so I think for me it's been helpful to understand that you can look at somebody doing amazing work and you can say, I want to do something like that one day. And instead of counting myself out, what I've done is said, okay, this is not about whether or not I'm like just worthy as a person inherently, but rather what skills do I need to do the work that they're doing. And I mean, I'm coming at it from a very like work related
Yeah,
approach,
no,
but
yeah.
it's just the first example that popped into my head where, I used to admire these EDs a lot. And I would be like, okay, well, what do I have to offer that I can do? And I would always think like I can only be, the the other roles in a nonprofit. But I remember one day, really getting to see more of what an ED does, and I just said, oh, you know what? I'm smart. I can learn things. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, let me just figure out what they really do and then figure out how to learn those skills. And I was offered that kind of position within a year of really starting to think that way. So I think that's the other thing is the power of um, not allowing never to take over your mindset. When you do that, the world opens up and there are just so many more possibilities when you give yourself permission to explore them.
Do you think when we say never to ourselves, it is coming from a place where we don't have the confidence in ourselves
Mm.
to
Mm-hmm.
understand that we can do this or we are able to make these relationships or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
have these dreams or accept that it is okay to choose to do what makes us happy?
Oh yeah, yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you've made a lot of good points in there. But to your first point, I think yes, I think that we're limiting ourselves because we see other people doing things, and we just, I think we actually assume that they have something really really special, and that we don't have that, and that we can't get it. And I mean, the human brain is amazing, but it makes all of those really quick connections, really quick assumptions, really quick conclusions, in a millisecond, really. And if you don't pause and kind of tear that apart and check it, then that becomes your narrative in your mind that you are not capable. And, frankly, if you don't believe it, if you believe that you're not capable, that's what everyone else is going to believe too. So I think that mindset is extremely important, maybe the most important thing, really, because everything else in my mind is learnable, doable. Networking. If someone has all these connections and you don't, how did they get there? They started off just like you one day with no connections, and they grew it from maybe one or what have you. And it's the same thing with everything else. Sometimes I used to think like people have so much more money than me, that's why they're able to do all of these things. And then I realized, you can make money, and you can keep some of it, and you can grow it, and and I mean, there's so much to learn in the world about everything. It's a matter of, like you said, to your latter point, of knowing what matters to you actually. The self-reflective part, the part where you really observe what excites you and what makes you interested in something, what, like, lean into that, and then you're going to be able to kind of find your path as far as where you want to go. And as long as you believe in yourself that you can get there by, just kind of being, I mean, frankly, tenacious, and starting off with the mindset that it's possible. I think that's what we're talking about today, that, it doesn't have to be never. It can be, this is possible. And when you make that switch, then things do become possible.
And to me, it also sounds like, the American dream, like
Mm,
all these opportunities and we can seize them. And for some reason, while we might culturally have this concept of an American dream, I think we might limit ourselves
mm-hmm,
even if our culture is saying you can do anything and be anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
I
I mean,
wonder,
hmm
do you think it comes from our own childhood experiences, our cultures in our homes, or is
I,
it something that society puts on young people growing up?
mm, I think it's all of the above, and that's why it's so complicated, right? I think that when we tell ourselves never, it can come from all of those places or one of those places, but I think that's why it's so complicated. And today's, talk is really about lifting each other up beyond that mindset. Because I do personally believe that, people are very, very conditioned throughout their entire lives. I think expectations are incredibly important to someone's life and their life path. Um, but it all starts, in childhood. It starts when you're, very impressionable, and you're getting all of these cues from everyone in your world. And now today, our world is it's really a bigger place if you think about it, right? Because you're
Yeah,
getting information from all over the world, literally, right? You're getting information from strangers across the globe. I mean, you're getting feedback sometimes, like direct feedback. Like, can you imagine these kids putting themselves out there, making videos, I mean, and getting comments from strangers all over the world? Like, this is a huge,
yeah,
big world now, and we are getting information and cues and direction and instruction, whether it be subtle or covert or really, obvious and out there. All of those, I think, culminate to uh, to tell us what we're capable of, and I think at the very least, I hope that people will uh, challenge themselves to notice when they're saying never to themselves, and question it, questioning, I think, is the beginning of really dismantling this conditioning that may very well not be serving your purpose.
when you talk about how you were fascinated with executive directors and then something triggered your ability to switch from,
Mm-hmm.
oh wow, I really revere executive directors too, oh wow, I could be one. Can you point to, was it an event, was it advice, was it relationships that allowed you to make that switch, or was it just kind of kismet?
Well, I'll be really honest. In my experience, and this is why my first answer to the topic today was it's about insecurity in my mind. That's the first thing I think of. I think it can be so many things, but that's the first thing, because in my experience it was I had to get closer to it, and get a peek again into it, to see, what people are doing. And what happened with me is I really, I can't stress enough how important it is for people to reflect on what really brings them joy in their lives, and what would bring them joy in their lives, and kind of their life's, I don't want to say like you have to have a mission or some purpose, but just what do you want this life to be? And for me, I had an idea, and I could have just, limited myself in my role and my work. um, but I felt like this idea would help me improve my community and bring, services to people that really needed them. And that's really, really rewarding for me. And so I decided to be, I think, kind of courageous. Like, I was afraid. I was afraid to bring it up, but I did it anyways. Um, and when I did, I got to come into a little bit into this inner circle of the people that were running the organization, because I had brought this new programming idea, and they liked it, to my surprise, and they wanted to support it, and I just got to get closer. And so when I got closer, I really got to look around and say, like, oh, like, I actually feel like I kind of belong here. I feel good here. And I'm seeing, the work that people are doing, and it just demystified it for me, really. That's really what it was. It was like the admiration was almost like also an idolization, where it felt kind of unreachable. And and that was really all of my own mindset of just like thinking everyone had something that was, bigger and better than me, something that I just was missing, that I didn't even know what it was. I just figured they're there for a reason and I'm not there for a reason. Um, but as soon as I got closer and just started having a peek in, I realized like, oh, these are just people like me, doing work that I could do. I could do that, And so it was just a demystification moment. It was a moment where I just got to see behind the curtain. And I think that, this is why this kind of talk is important to me, is that I want people to hear that like you are good enough. Whatever you're wanting to do, um, I want you to know that you're good enough, you can do it. It's just literally a matter of getting closer to it, and you are going to build your confidence. The small steps that you take into that world, you're just going to build in confidence, and because you will feel like you have that experience, you are doing it, you're doing it now, you can do more. And it's just like other things we've talked about. Once you get to one goalpost, then the horizon becomes wider, you can see farther. And it really is that, it really is that. But if you know from the beginning, or wherever you are today, if you take on the mindset that you don't have to limit yourself, that you don't have to say never, that you can dismiss those voices and replace them with anything is possible, and that this is possible, what you want and what bring joy to you is possible, then I think it opens up the world to all the possibilities.
I think you touched on something that really changed my career trajectory, and that is that knowledge that the person occupying the position that you want in the future actually doesn't know everything. Like,
Yeah.
I think we
Yep.
believe that
Yep.
these people in these higher positions know everything, and they don't. They just know how to get the answer when they need it. And that's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a good learning experience to understand that those people are just human beings
Yep.
who are just as foul, flawed as the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't know everything. And we are capable of that same role.
Absolutely. I think that is a big, big part of it. Yeah, like when I said it, it felt like I was, it was almost an idolization. I said that in a way that you think that people are flawless, just like you said. Um, but also that they have something that is not attainable. And I
Hmm.
just I just think that, one of the things that has helped me feel like I belong in this space, even trying to combat things like, imposter syndrome, all of that good stuff. Even if you do get the things that you're working towards, then you got to deal with that. Um, Part of what has helped me is really really valuing myself, actually. And so and just who I am. And I think that that can be key too. So one, understanding, like you said, that the people in these positions don't know everything. They are not, perfect human beings that have something that you're incapable of attaining. That all of their skills are actually learnable skills, just in general. This is really an aside, but the yesterday I shouldn't even say this out loud, but yesterday I was thinking about how I love singing. I'm not a good singer, but I love singing. And I was watching somebody sing that was in lessons and stuff on YouTube. And I had the same epiphany again about this. And I thought, you know what? I'm not a good singer. I can admit that. But I'm looking at these people that have attained the skill set through lessons, and through
Hmm.
this discipline. And I realized, oh, like I could get that skill set. It's just funny that like I have to learn this lesson over and over again. But you can apply it to everything. You can literally apply it to everything because it's true everywhere. So yes, you can do that. You can understand that it's a skill set that can be attained. One, and two, that you have something special to offer.
Yeah,
Whoever you are, there's no one else like you. You have something special to offer, and that has helped me, you know, where I am feeling like I actually do belong here because, those skills, those are attainable. anyone can get those skills, but nobody can be me and bring my unique experience and perspective to this role.
I think you're absolutely right. And for me, something that is super helpful is making sure that my inner circle is a group of people who only sees the best in each other and
Mm,
sees the best in me. And I think that helps build my confidence when it falters or I like find imposter syndrome infringing upon my day to day.
mhm.
Knowing that other people see the value in you and see your potential as opposed to see you as you are at that moment, that's really helpful, at least for me, and it uplifts me. I don't know if do you find the same way when you have your circle and you go to them and ask for their advice when you need that uplift? Does their view of you help you move out of those spaces that kind of sometimes limit you or hold
Oh
you in
yeah.
place?
Oh, 100%. No, I wouldn't be anywhere without that actually. Because I mean really, like truly, truly, truly. And this is why, building this community around what we're doing here is so important because um I mean so many times because of just who I am, I'm an empathetic person and it serves me in the work that I want to do like that. And that's a beautiful thing that I don't want to lose. But it also in my workplace, in my relationships with the people that I'm working with, I can often like give everything over without like remembering about myself, without remembering who I am, without remembering my value, just like almost sacrificing myself. And it takes a village of my it really does take a village for me every time to like be reminded like one, you're worthy of being happy and treated well and all of that good stuff and to not feel guilty about pursuing the next opportunity. And I mean there's so many instances that I could point to where if I was left to my own uh I guess just my own sometimes even negative thought, but just whatever's in my head, if I was left to my own impulses of trying to just help other people and give and give and give, I would be left with nothing. I really would be left with nothing. And so you got to have people around you that are going to lift you up in a way that is about you, like people that actually care about you and want the best for you. And we've talked about it before, but I think sometimes it's so much easier to do that for someone else than to do it for yourself.
It
And so we
is.
need it. We rely on it. Depend on it. Absolutely.
I know I often, if I have to sell myself for pitching for clients or what have you, I often think about how would the people who support me describe me. And I think
Mm,
that's often different than how I would describe myself. But when you are, you know, trying to put out the best version of you, I think it's often, I I would say almost always better to have the voice of your inner circle be the voice that comes
mm-hmm.
out of your mouth than your own voice.
Oh, absolutely. And we have to keep saying that because I need to internalize that. That's the best thing ever. Because it's funny, like I mean, just literally thinking about this in this moment when you say those two things, I think about like how I would describe myself without thinking that, and that it would be really like talking about like just my like very hard skill set, if that makes sense,
Mhm.
right? Like just like I'm an attorney, here are my credentials, like proving myself like in this very like stoic way.
Yep.
um but you know what, like my resume has changed so much in the last couple years, and I think it's in part like due to that, this little exercise of like how would other people describe you, what do you have to offer to the world that is beyond credentials. Like I think that again, talking about socialization and the way that society kind of molds us, I think that we're taught that that is the only legitimate, like some things are only there's only so many legitimate things that you're allowed to talk about as far as what you can offer, right? And so you talk about your credentials, you talk about your schooling, you talk about your experience, um, but more recently I have gone beyond that to really like bring my whole value to the table, and it's through the courage that's endowed upon me, with people that see me in the best light, like you talked about, to say like, no, I have all of this other stuff to offer as well, and I would be amazing in this role for these reasons. Like it really does change your whole mindset. It really does.
It does. Yeah, I saw a meme on, I think, Instagram this week of a woman posting a picture of her very young toddler child, and there were some people who saw the child as a girl, and the woman said when people see the child as a girl, they say, "Oh, you're so pretty. Oh, don't you look so
Mm.
pretty? You're so beautiful, little princess." But when they see the child as a boy, they think, "Oh, you're so strong. You're so tough. Look at all you can accomplish." And I know that is true in society, and it gets driven home on how the gender constructs
Mm.
that have been in place influence how people are treated. But I think overall, it also impacts how we think about ourselves, right? Like if you're that child who's always told you can do and be anything, that's a lot
Mm.
different than a child who's only told your only value is how pretty you look.
100%, and that's the real right there. I mean I can just share my personal experience because I hope it speaks to other people's. But I developed young. I was over sexualized when I was a young girl. People would call me sexually explicit names when I was 12, and I didn't even know what they
Ugh.
meant. And it was very confusing for me because I always felt like I was some kind of a villain, like women would treat me badly.
Hmm.
And I didn't understand it because I'm a pretty sweet person actually, and so
You're a
I
very
didn't get
sweet
it,
person.
didn't understand. Like I know that about myself, and so I was very confused. But I think it totally sticks with you, and it can shape you, especially in your younger years. And I mean, and beyond too. So I mean, that's just one example where I felt like I had to lean into the being pretty and being sexy. Honestly, like I mean, that was a part of my teen years where I just thought like, this is what I'm supposed to be, I guess. And 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 then you kind of like, it's almost a self-fulfilling or societal fulfilling prophecy in that way. And so it is intriguing to me, the power of other people's expectations. It is
Yeah.
extremely powerful. And so I think that this is really the whole reason that we're talking about this today again, is the same thing is happening right now. Like think about an example in your childhood where that was true, just like I did right now. But also like challenge yourself to realize like the same forces could be right now in your world, in your lifetime, in your daily life right now, but you might not think it because you don't have the narrative of thinking, oh, well, I'm not an impressionable teenager anymore, I'm not a child,
Right.
or what have you. But the truth is
Hmm.
that expectations are extremely powerful psychological tools that people don't even know that necessarily they're using. Just like to your example, that's an incredible example, because the people putting those expectations on that child, they don't even know that they're doing it.
Right.
they, they're just reacting, and their reactions come from the socialization and internal cues that they have, the external cues that they've internalized. And so just challenge I think we all have to challenge ourselves on a regular basis to check the expectations that are being put upon us, the expectations we're putting upon ourselves, and really like the limiters that we're putting on our life because of society's expectations of who we are and what we are worthy of doing and being.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, oftentimes it's incumbent upon us to make those changes. As to that gender construct example, what I was born in a hospital in Brussels, Belgium, and in that case, they take the boy infants and wrap them in pink, and they take the girl infants and wrap them in blue because they're trying to destroy those. And this was, I was born in the
Wow.
mid to late 70s, and that's where those constructs
Oh,
just
wow.
started disappearing. So
That's
it's not only
amazing.
incumbent upon us, but it's also the changes that can be effectuated through our institutions and our
Mm-hmm.
businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and making those decisions for not only ourselves, but to help others to uplift them.
And the consciousness is what is sticking out to me right now in what you're saying. The
Yeah.
consciousness is key. So this is why, talking about it is incredibly important, because when we have the consciousness amongst us to see what is happening and how it impacts people's mentalities and then people's lives ultimately, right? Their entire
Hmm.
lives can be extremely impacted in this way, and they are, frankly, extremely impacted in this way. Um, then we can begin to explore how to change it if we think that's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that we have to have these conversations, large and small, internally and externally. Absolutely.
That's something I've noticed in my work is that I've noticed a change in not only how we as individuals are starting to be more open, and I think it's from
Mm-hmm.
what you talked about it, we have more information, and that can be a very positive thing too, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
as many as those voices that are out there that are negative and limiting us, there are those voices out there that are positive
Oh, yeah.
that help us individually. And I think we've also seen that shift to some extent, at least we're starting to, in businesses, especially post pandemic, and that they're seeing that, hey, maybe we need to treat ourselves and our employees a little better too. Like I
Absolutely.
remember reading this article about a ice cream shop in Pittsburgh, and they're just a small independent operator, and the man who owned the business was whatever rate he was paid before, like $8-10 an hour, wasn't getting anyone to work post pandemic to sell ice cream. Then he raised his the minimum pay at his shop to $15 an hour, and he started getting all these employees lining up to want to work there. And then when he opened, he started paying more. I think our old mindset in business was, well, you're just going to lose money because you're paying your employees too much.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out he started making more money and more profit than ever before because,
Wow.
wow, amazing. When your employees are happy, you can make more money.
It's the scarcity versus the abundance mindset is the way that I frame it for myself, anyways. And it is so key. And I also think that that scarcity mindset, in my own experience, is toxic, actually,
Hmm.
to any organization. Like, I think it's toxic to human beings, and I think it's toxic when you organize a bunch of human beings around it, actually.
Yeah.
That is my theory. My theory is absolutely that. Because when you operate from a place of a mindset of abundance, then again, it goes perfectly well with the theme today, is everything is suddenly possible. um
Yeah.
and all of the old vestiges of competition and the market is all about competition, right? And I just want to say, as a witness to seeing both of those things in my personal life, um it's just false. I think that the mindset of scarcity is a way to, frankly, in my opinion, to keep people in their place. That's the
Oh,
way that I see it.
absolutely. Hmm.
And the mindset of abundance is the opposite of that. It's what we should lean into, because just like what we're doing, our whole purpose here is to lift each other up. It's the idea that there is an abundance in the world for all of us to share in, and that when we lift each other up, we share even more so in that abundance, like you just talked about in that example. I think that that, in my mind, is really, what can translate worldwide, in every community, in every family. There's no need for this, this idea that someone else has to suffer in order for you to do well.
Absolutely. And it
We can all
reminds me
lift
of
up.
that
Mm-hmm.
saying that I think before pre-pandemic, it
Mm-hmm.
was very much there's a limited number of seats at the table
Right.
concept. And, I think that also applies in our household. Sometimes when say we have, I don't even, I don't like Thanksgiving because I don't like the idea and concept behind what we're celebrating there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But, you know, a big family meal in the United States, I think we tend to remove the children from the table because there's not room for them there.
Mm-hmm.
But there is space for them there. And I
Yeah.
think when they make that changes, it not only helps the children, but it helps the adults. have better relationships with those children, and those children learn skill sets like conversation and those type of things when they're
Absolutely.
at the adult table. And then when it comes to our professional world, when we come from the concept of there's room for everybody at this table,
Mm,
that mindset that we can welcome everyone really changes how we can do our job, how a business can change its methods in a way that is positive for itself internally, externally, and for profit. I think now finally data is showing as well.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and this great reckoning of challenging the status quo, I think, is exciting for me because even I remember I interviewed for some kind of management position, and the way that I was describing my management style, I had never been a manager, but I already had clearly in my mind how I would be a manager, right? And
Yep.
my management style was radically different than anybody else's, because I mean, it comes from the place of values, right? It's and I think that capitalism, in general, or however we want to describe the way that we've been, operating in this economic market for so long.
I think
Um,
we call it Milton Friedman's market.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
It has very much been based on the idea of, competition and hierarchy, like that. When you were speaking
Hmm.
about structures, it made me think about how the values of profiting, and how profit is over people always is. It made me think about how hierarchy naturally almost unravels from that or unfolds from that. And so if we think a little bit differently, and I think, like, to your point, it is happening. There's been a little cultural shift, which is, I think, usually the most important kind. So
Absolutely.
this little cultural shift that is happening, it is going to change a lot. And if we're smart, we can seize this moment and understand, as you were saying, that this is going to be beneficial for everyone. It's not a zero sum game. It is a let's grow the pie. Let's build
Yeah.
on the table. And I can just imagine a world where, everyone treats each other with grace. First of all, I think that's been a big COVID lesson. We need to
Mm,
treat each other with grace, right? But
absolutely.
also fundamentally changing the way that we see each other in relation to one another. So just like we were saying, challenge yourself, to understand that these people that are in these other roles are not any, inherently better than you. I think that I hope that this cultural shift will also bring us to a place where hierarchy is lessened, and there's a little more democracy in the workplace, and that people start seeing each other as just really valuable human beings to one another, and just having value in each other regardless of, these titles and this fake hierarchy that is literally not a real thing. It's a concept that we put on a piece of paper, and I mean, it's literally because we want to ingrain a psychological effect into people's minds, and choosing something different. I mean, I know it sounds radical to people, but I don't think that it's going to be for much longer. I think that we have gotten to this place where we have just seen the humanity in one another. I think that's really what's happened, and I think it's incredible, actually, because for so long, that's to me what has been missing.
I think you raised an excellent point that I think brings this whole full circle in that when we start seeing humanity and the capability in others that are around us, whether they're in our workplace or our home life or our friends, it is then easier to see the humanity in ourselves
Mm,
because we start from that mindset of seeing the abundance in
mhm,
others. We can then apply that same thought to us because we've almost conditioned ourselves to
mm,
just look for the potential and the good and the grace.
absolutely, absolutely. Oh, I want to live in that world, and I think it's incumbent upon us to build it. Um,
Absolutely. I am
yeah,
there with you building it.
yes. And we're so happy that all of you listening are here building it with us as well. So, with that, Tessa, thank you so much for another incredible conversation. And I hope you all have felt uplifted.
Thank you, Cy. thank you everyone for listening and sharing with us how you also uplift yourself and others.
And don't forget, you're phenomenal.
Yes.
Bye, Tessa.
Bye.